Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. I am Simply G, and today I'm going to be showing off all of the manga that I got for this first month of 2020, how I started this new decade, the new year. There's a lot to get through, a couple things. Mainly there's a lot because I got quite a bit secondhand, surprisingly. And for this coming year, my plan is to do two separate videos, one for anime and one for manga. I don't actually have any anime this month, so this will just be it for pickups. But in future months, if I do have a substantial amount of one or the other, then I'm just going to split them up. Hopefully that makes sense for you guys, and if you're interested in both, you can watch both, or if you're just interested in one or the other, you can just choose which one you enjoy. So I'm going to get straight into this video, and I hope you guys enjoy. So first up, before I show off any of the manga, quite a few of the volumes that I got this month were from Better World Books, which, if you're not familiar with that website, is a online store where you can buy ex-library books. I really like it because every purchase, part of the proceeds go towards literary programs and library programs across the globe. And for long-time viewers, you know that I don't really mind books that are a little bit well-loved, a little bit more beaten up, especially when it comes to just standard Viz volumes and things like that. It's a great option if you don't mind having something that may come in library condition. Thankfully, I have a pretty good system of cleaning ex-library volumes up, so they look pretty good as new. And if you are interested in a video like that, I do have some more books from Better World Books coming, so I may do a video on that and just how I restore library books or ex-library books to a better quality, a more acceptable quality, a higher quality, get rid of the stickers, any markings on them, pressing them flat. And I know people take off the yellowing off the pages. I don't really do that because I'm not that fussed, but there are also ways to do that as well. So if you're interested in that, let me know in the comments below, and I'll try to make a video about that. But before that, the first series I'm going to be talking about is Kaze Hikaru, volume 24 and 25. This is it's a completed in Japanese, ongoing in English josei series about a 15-year-old girl who joins the Shinsengumi in order to get revenge for the murder of her older brother and father. And then after a period of time, she's really grown close with the Shinsengumi members, most notably her, mentor, or who's on the covers here, who is Okito Soji, who is a very well-known Japanese and Shinsengumi member, swordsman, real-life historical figure. And so it's like a slow burn romance between those two, very, very slow burn. The Japanese series is 44 volumes long, I believe, 44, 45. We currently have 27 volumes in English, but it's a very slow release, and honestly, kind of a miracle we are still having it released in any capacity in English, because it's, I can't imagine this is a bestseller for Shoujo Beat. But this story is really, I think it has a lot of really good elements to it. I think that Watanabe does a great job in just all of the historical research. It does feature a lot of actual real-world events that the Shinsengumi were involved in. The characters are all quite likable, and it's pretty fun. It doesn't take itself too seriously, but when it needs to be serious, it is. I think if you like slow burn romance, if you don't mind sort of age gaps within a historical context, because Sei, our main character, she's 15, 16 throughout the majority of the series, and then Soji's like 20, 21, so, be aware of that. But it's very, very good. I really enjoy this series. The fact that it is an ongoing and very long-running josei series, the fact that Viz is still putting out, I can't think that it would be for any other reason than they have a legal obligation to continue, publishing the series, because I don't think this is a story many people know. But if you're a fan of historical fiction, slow burn romance, historical romance, Shinsengumi history, and sort of gender bent or that kind of she's the man type of story, then yeah, check this one out. I know some of the earlier volumes are out of print, but if you don't mind buying secondhand, then I think they are fairly easy to find. 27 is the most recent volume. I do think 28 has been solicited, but not for another like 6 or 8 months till release. But yeah, I think it's one that people would like if they tried it. I just don't know a lot of people who have tried it or even know about it. So, thanks Viz for continuing to put it out. And yeah. Next is another series. The first of these volumes, which I got new, but the subsequent volumes I also got through Better World Books. So we have volume 27, volume 29, volume 30, volume 31, and volume 32 of Kakashi. This is a 35-volume shonen series. I think a lot of people may have heard of this. It is quite popular with people who have actually read it, and I really enjoy this one. This is by Yellow Tanabe. I really like how she writes her characters. I really like how the character relationships are. This follows our main character, who is the newest or youngest new head of his Kakashi family, and along with his best friend / neighbor, she is also from a Kakashi family, and so together they protect a particular area that is particularly spiritually strong. Their family has done so forever, over the past several centuries, but he doesn't really want to be a Kakashi. That's not his ultimate goal. He feels a strong responsibility to the area, and because he is, the next head of the family, has a lot stronger Kakashi powers than his siblings, his older and younger brother. He's the only one who can really continue as the role of, or as the head of the family, but he's hoping to kind of break contract with this area and with the local god. Meanwhile, there's also a larger conspiracy and a lot of collusion within the upper ranking echelon of Kakashi, and all of these things. I really, really like it. I really appreciate that Yellow Tanabe is able to write very human moments of quietness. It's not just all bombastic, Ayakashi or yokai fights or Kakashi fights. It's not just this character trying to become powerful or to, become the best. Really, his personal dreams are to become a patissier or a baker and bake cakes and design cakes that he loves, which again is not a pretty typical shonen goal, but I appreciate it. And I really like his friendship and the history he has with his next door neighbor / childhood friend / best friend. The two of them have very understandable friendship and chemistry, both romantic and just sort of a in a sibling or very close friend way, which is my jam. I really like, childhood friends to lovers trope. You guys know me. That's what I enjoy. And it's done very well in this. I haven't completed it. Obviously, you saw that I don't have volume 28 yet. I am expecting that. And then I still need 33 to 35. And then I will have all of it. This one is one that I do think people may not have heard of or have skipped over, just because when it was coming out, both in Japan and in English, it was overshadowed by a lot more popular shonen stuff, things like Naruto, Bleach, Fullmetal Alchemist, etc. But it is definitely worth the read, especially if you're enjoying things like, although not one for one, and I wouldn't say they're necessarily completely the same. The softer human moments definitely remind me, are done in a similar way in Demon Slayer. I've heard Neuro Rise of the Yokai Clan is also a fairly similar type of premise. I haven't read it, so I can't say whether or not they, fit together very well. But if you like sort of Japanese supernatural or yokai type of action stories, check this one out. I know that Tanabe just recently completed her more recent series, Birdman, which we haven't gotten in English, but I do wish that we could, because I really, really, really like her work, and I think there's a lot of people who do. This isn't a very well-known series, but I know that everybody who or everyone who I've talked to who has read it or did watch the anime as well, really, really likes it. So, that's cool. Yeah, I'm looking forward to completing this series over the next couple months, and, and just having it finished and reading the concluding this strong story of friendship and family and responsibility and, with a supernatural twist and conspiracy and mystery and trying to protect other people and yourself and what's right, and, just pretty typical shonen themes, but just executed in a really, really solid way. I also really like that this story, as I said, has quite quiet human moments, and I feel like these characters act like people, not shonen protagonists, if that makes sense. I feel like these characters interact like actual human beings do, rather than characters in a manga who are trying to, just get from point A to point B and trying to achieve a goal. It's very good in the organic feel of the characters and of the plot and of their motivations. So yeah, check out Kakashi. Next is another series that I completed and I got secondhand, although this was from a local seller, so not ex-library or anything like that, but it meant that I was able to complete the series, including the out-of-print volume, which is going for a lot higher than I think most people would pay for it. And this is Chika Umino's Honey and Clover. So we have volume 6, and then volume 7, volume 8, volume 9, and volume 10. Oh, I need to take a sticker off there. But this is, I think, Umino's most well-known work, aside from March Comes in Like a Lion, which is a much more recent work than Honey and Clover. But this is a longer josei series about some art students, like in an art school, in their kind of university education. And they all have various relationship issues with each other and with others. There's a lot of, tangled relationship diagrams here. But I think it's more so than like a romance or anything like that. This is a story about finding yourself and coming of age and making decisions on your future, which I think most, young people, those in university and art school and stuff like that, have to make, especially when we're talking about artists who are trying to do what they love, be creative, but also find a way to make money with that thing that they're so passionate about. So really, really, really strong series. I'm really looking forward to the Blu-ray re-release of the story, or of the anime from Discotek. I hadn't ever completed the manga for this one because I was reading it initially by my library a long time ago, and I don't think they had the last 2 or 3 volumes, so I just never finished it. But I was wanting to finish the series sooner rather than later because I knew that volume 8, although I'm not sure if it's technically out of print, it is very, very hard to find. So I would say that it is out of print, and I don't know whether or not we'll see a second printing of it. So if this is the series that you're wanting to get into, sooner rather than later would probably be my encouragement. But so happy to finally own this series in its entirety in the collection. I'm so happy that I stopped just putting it off, and I'm so happy that a local seller was willing to sell to me, or I was able to find it locally, which really made it a lot easier for me, and I got a very good deal on it. Yeah, check your local, wherever you buy things, because you can get some pretty good deals, and a lot of people who sell manga are generally collectors, so they're in very good condition 97% of the time. But yeah, Honey and Clover, really good. Watch the anime. I hope that one day we may see March Comes In Like a Lion, although it is probably harder to bring over to Western audiences just because it's about shogi. But, the anime seems to have done well and be very popular, so maybe someday. Okay, on to the new manga. I'm going to start with the most important. This I actually got at the end of December. I got a couple of these books at the end of December, but I had already filmed my end of December video, so I just decided to stick them in this one. And that is Our Dreams at Dusk, Shimanami Tasagare, Volume 4 by Yuki Kamitani. A phenomenal ending to a phenomenal series. One that's just so very human, so very empathetic, so very understanding to just people and a particular community, and trying to find your own place within that community, and trying to encourage acceptance, or encourage acknowledgement, if not even acceptance. And I think that's one of the largest themes, especially in particular with this volume, and I think it ties the whole story up together, is that for a large part of the queer community, or the LGBT community, what people want the most is to be acknowledged, to be recognized for who they are, for what they are, for how they present themselves, even if other people don't fully accept them for that, or understand them for that. Just the acknowledgement that you are valid in being that way is very, very, very important. And I think that it's something that all people, regardless of sexuality or gender or whatever else, values. And I think we can all relate to that in certain aspects. This particular volume had a lot of very powerful emotional points. We see the culmination of a lot of particular storylines, and not everything is, answered and tied up in a fancy bow, but that's how life is. And I think it's very, very telling that Kamitani made particular decisions when writing this, and ended it in the way that they did, which was so very powerful. It sort of shows the hopefulness of new beginnings and endings, and it made me cry so much happy and sad tears. I just adore this series, and I don't think there's too many LGBT manga that is able to capture things in such a genuine way that Kamatani is able to, obviously from their own experiences within the community, and I can assume within their own life and their own personal, self and expression and identity, because again, I say this pretty much every time I bring them up, but they are a ex-gendered or non-binary individual, asexual as well, and one of our main characters in this story sort of is that. You see a lot of characters within Kamatani's manga that could represent them, or is telling their story, their own struggle with figuring out who they want to be and how they want to present themselves, and explaining themselves in ways that other people might be able to understand. And ultimately, again, one of the largest messages is, even if people don't understand that, or don't understand you and how you choose to identify yourself, or choose to express your identity, it doesn't mean that you have to dismiss that, or it doesn't mean that that isn't valid, and that you don't, that you have to worry about not being understood, as long as others accept you as a person and accept that that's just how you are and that's who you are, and accept you for you, even if they don't inherently understand that. The acceptance or the acknowledgement is the most important aspect of that. It's just very, it's so wonderful. And I think first and foremost, that acceptance or that acknowledgement comes from within first. The first person you have to convince, or you have to acknowledge, is yourself. Because a lot of times it does have to be in this element or this process of accepting yourself for who you are before you can, tell other people or express yourself in a way that would indicate to other people that, you're not within the expected societal norm, quote unquote. It's very, very, very good. If you are a fan of LGBT manga, or if you are within the community and you're looking for a very powerful, personal, poignant story that's very hopeful, and very realistic, and I think covers a lot of various aspects of the community and the importance of community and the struggles within the community, this is my number one recommendation. It was the best series that came out this year, or last year I should say, and especially within its genre. There's not too many titles that I can say come to par with it, but it's a must read in my opinion. I think even if you're not a fan of LGBT manga, or if you're not, someone who identifies as queer or whatever, it's an important read just to get some perspective and some insight. Even if you don't love it, I do think it's one that most people should read. And because it's very empathetic, it's very human in all of the messages that it has. And I'd be hard pressed to find someone who just outright dismisses it. And if you do, then there's no helping you. But Our Dreams at Dusk, phenomenal. I hope we see more of Kamatani's manga in English, as I always say, because, it's an important one. And they have a lot of really interesting titles that I'm looking forward to and hope to read one day, especially Shonen Note. Everyone put that on the 7 Seas surveys whenever it comes, because I do that and I want to read it. Next is the only one of these volumes that I needed before I was caught up to current releases, and this is Mizuki's Kitano, The Great Tanuki War. This is the 3rd volume of 6 that have been released of Kitano, and this is a collection of the classic yokai manga about a yokai boy who is sort of just the middleman between humanity and yokai, and he solves problems that each side causes the other. And it's a bit fun, it's a bit mischievous. This is, a kid's horror manga from the 60s and 70s. It's not, anything ultimately life-changing, but it is hugely influential. Mizuki is an incredible artist and creator. He had such a vision for his works and such strong themes and stories that he wanted to tell. And Kitaro is just, he's such a good character. I love that we've finally gotten the series in English. There was a previous Kitaro release by Drawn and Quarterly many years ago. It is now out of print. It's a very thick omnibus, but I believe all of the stories in that have since been re-released in these smaller, more, I guess, kid-approachable volumes. I've spoken about Kitaro before on the channel, and most notably my podcast that I have with Whimsical Pictures, and these particular releases are sort of a hand-picked best of the best from the full Kitaro manga, because it's very, there's a lot of stories, and not all of them are perfect, not all of them need to be collected. Mizuki himself chose the stories that he wanted to share, and then Zach Davison, the translator and longtime friend of Mizuki, then kind of worked which stories out of those choices would suit, the Western market or these releases in the best way. Mizuki has now since passed, but very, very influential, wonderful, such a creative man, and I'm so glad that we're now finally seeing his life's work, his magnum opus of everything that he wanted to create, which is just so mischievous and cheeky and happy, but still covers a lot of very important and adult and mature themes in a very understandable way. And for a community of young people or children in post-war Japan, it's just so wonderful. I love Kitaro. This is the quintessential beginning of yokai manga. And I mean, you guys know me, I'm a huge yokai fan and yokai manga fan, so no-brainer for this one. If you like kind of quirky, supernatural kids comics, then Kitaro is a must-read. It's very Goosebumps-esque, it's not it's not a brilliantly dark or mature story. It's quite funny. It's quite, childlike. But it's a classic, and it's so wonderful to see it finally in English. Next, we have Volume 11 of Requiem of the Rose King by Ayakano. Oh my goodness, guys. If there's two things that I love in this world, it is yokai manga and historical fiction manga. Oh man, so this is a retelling of the War of the Roses, most notably the plays Henry VI and Richard III by Shakespeare. And both of those are tragedies, just by the way. So that could just give you an idea of what to expect when reading this manga. It does have a somewhat, I don't want to say supernatural twist. There's an element of, and I might be because of the strong religious themes in this series, but there's a lot of implications of demons and all of that within the series. It's so beautiful. Ayakano captures the story perfectly. I think Richard is a really compelling main character. Ayakano is able to just capture the the immense craziness of sort of the political the political scene of this period of British history, and how also Shakespeare, you know, showed it and popularized these particular individuals, these particular royals, and represented this particular skirmish between two houses. It's so good. It's so good. This is a shoujo manga, but it is just printed under the Viz logo, I'm sure, in order to show that, you know, this is one that I think most people would enjoy to read, especially if you like, you know, historical fiction. It's quite, there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of high stakes drama, there's a lot of twists and turns and tragic, heart-rendering scenes, and it is very much, as I said, a tragedy. I don't expect a happy ending for our characters, because history didn't give it to them. Shakespeare definitely didn't give it to them. And I know that I will be heartbroken by the end of it. But that just seems to be my life, as per always. Fantastic series. If you're not reading it, even if you're not like a shoujo fan, this is, you know, it is an action, mystery, political, I don't want to say thriller, but, you know, it's character drama. It's very dense in what it does. This isn't, I know people think the word shoujo is synonymous with like romance and high school and more typical genres of the demographic. This isn't it. And, you know, as I always say, shoujo is a very diverse demographic, as is shonen, as is seinen, as is every other demographic. But I think shoujo gets the least amount of representation and respect when we're talking about genre, just generally in the manga community. And this is certainly one that I think most people would enjoy if you gave it a shot, especially, as I said, if you like historical action and you know, all character skirmishes and mystery and ooh, it's so good. Plus it's just beautiful. It's just drawn in such a beautiful way. Yeah, I mean, check it out. If you haven't, definitely do. It's one that if you're not reading, you're missing out on, just frankly, just full stop. It's one that I think more people should be reading and enjoying. Next is another shoujo manga. This one actually published under Shoujo Beat from Viz. But this one also has a very wide appeal. I think a lot of people would enjoy it. If you're not reading it, then I'm surprised, because it's very, very popular. And that is Yona of the Dawn, Volume 21, by Mizuho Kusanagi. This is so good! This is the story of Princess Yona, who, after being ousted from the castle, her father's murder by her cousin, she is traveling around the city in order to regain her rightful position with 4 individuals who have particular powers called the 4 dragons, as well as her childhood friend and longtime bodyguard / potential romantic interest, plus a couple other characters here and there. But oh my gosh, there's a lot of action again. There's a lot of like very found family kind of comedic moments to this particular volume. We see the wrap up of the particular arc that we've been in. There's some very, very strong moments of characters confronting each other or having to work together, I guess, for the first time in a long time, and a lot of personal conflict from that, and the fear of losing people important to you, and responsibility, and oh, it's so good! I don't really need to sell Yona to a lot of people because, as I said, it's very popular. The anime was very popular. It's one that I think most people are reading. And again, it's a shoujo manga that I think, even if you're not into what a lot of people think of shoujo, then you'll still probably like this if you like, you know, high action kind of adventure fantasy stories. It's that. This is very reminiscent of sort of 90s shoujo, things like Fushigi Yugi, 12 Kingdoms, where it is a girl princess or whatever with a group and, you know, trying to run a kingdom or run a rebellion against a bad monarchy or whatever. It's very much an action adventure. And yeah, I think I really love the nuance of the characters in this series. I think the villain character, there's a lot to him, and I think because there's a lot of history between the three main characters, so there are two main characters and the main villain, it really gives a lot of conflict to both the characters and the readers. All of the dragons are wonderful. All the other characters are also wonderful. I just really like it. I like how much all of our characters have grown, and how our perspectives on them have grown as well. If you're not reading Yona, do yourself the favor and try it, or try the anime as well. It's on most every streaming site everywhere. You know, it's very, very good. And it's also the type of story that you finish the volume and you immediately want to go to the next volume. You immediately want the next volume. But it's kind of a slow release. We get a new volume every 2 to 3 months, which is not actually a slow release whatsoever. But when you want the next volume right away, it definitely feels like it takes forever. But yeah, Yona of the Dawn, phenomenal series. Cannot recommend it highly enough. And it's just really good. Next we have a debut, which is a little bit unusual, I guess, maybe, I don't know. This is volume 1 of Heavenly Delusion by Masakazu Ishiguro. This is a ongoing sci-fi dystopic seinen about two boys with the same face. One who is kind of traveling the outside world in this dystopic future filled with weird, horrific alien monsters, and then the other who is safe within a facility and is protected from the outside world. Yeah, it's very, very good. It's definitely got an element of mystery. There are a lot of things kind of presented that we don't have answers for. I did actually do a first impressions of this particular volume just the other day. I posted it, so, you know, watch that if you want kind of a more in-depth thoughts on this particular volume. But I will say that I think this was a particularly polarizing volume for a lot of people, because there's something that's revealed at the end which kind of changes the genre of this in my mind a little bit, because, well, not genre so much, but it's okay. So one of the characters at the very end of the last chapter in this volume reveals that they are a transgendered person, which is not inherently surprising, because I think there's a lot of moments within the volume that kind of tip you off that there's, you know, this character isn't necessarily as presented. There's maybe a lot more to them than you initially get just from looking at them, which I think is a great element, and I really appreciate that. I think it's I think there's a element of, is this because we're in a dystopic, you know, post alien kind of world future, that this character is trans, because that's a very common element of sci-fi and that, or is it because Ishiguro just wanted to write a trans character? Regardless, and I think that's one of my questions, is whether or not the intent was there that this character is trans, as in like how the reality of trans people, or if it is just like a quote-unquote weird sci-fi thing, which I think may be expanded more in subsequent volumes, which is why I'm very interested to read more. I really, if it is, I mean, regardless of either or an intention of the author, and I mean, there's definitely an argument for death of the author, and dependent on how this character is written or how Ishiguro wanted to write them. I really like that this could be potentially a LGBT genre fiction, because one of the most notable things when we are talking about representation in media is that queer people or people of certain races or religion, when they get representation in media, whether it be manga or film or whatever, their storylines are focused on that element of themselves. And then, so, like, okay, you have gay film or whatever about people being gay or lesbians, but you don't really see characters that often that are just exist within a world, a film or a comic or whatever, as gay or transgender or Muslim or whatever it is, without having that be the entirety of their character and the entirety of their character arc either. So I really hope that this is more so in line with like a number 6 or From the New World, where these characters are queer, but the story isn't about them coming to terms with, you know, their queerness. It's not the same type of story as, like, for example, My Dream or Our Dreams at Dusk, which is very focused on that element and done very well. But more so, it's just so happens that, you know, we've got this cool dystopic future type of story that just so happens to have a queer main character. So that's kind of where I'm sitting right now on that particular element, which I do look forward to seeing how it's handled in the future. But aside from that, I think this is very reminiscent of, I mean, I said From the New World, it's not quite like that to me as of right now. It reminds me of kind of a mixture between Parasite and more typical dystopic fiction. Even Akira is a kind of a good example of it, especially when it comes to this protected facility with kids who, you know, are sheltered from the outside world and may have potentially different interesting powers to them. So yeah, I think it's a really strong volume. I've heard people complain that there's a lot of like mystery in it, but it is only volume 1. You don't want to be solving too much of the mystery for a mystery series in the first volume. So I don't quite understand that complaint towards it or criticism towards it. But there's, it's kind of in an interesting spot for me, because I am looking forward to seeing how the next volume will handle certain topics. I do think it handled a lot of, or balanced a lot of the multiple protagonists and multiple storyline stuff very well. I think the actual dystopic future that is shown is very strong, and there's a lot to look forward to this series potentially. There is only 3 volumes out in Japan as of yet, but the series itself has won a couple awards in Japan, so it's quite well liked and quite well respected or well received. And Denpa has had a pretty strong catalog of series as of so far. So, you know, dystopic fiction and like sci-fi fiction isn't always my favorite genre. I don't have too many that fit within those genres in particular in my collection. I mean, Number 6 and Akira are the two ones that immediately come to mind. But I look forward to another strong one, especially if it does have these elements that I was talking about earlier. And I like a good mystery. I want to know what they quite mean when they're talking about heaven and going outside of the outside and all of these other things. So yeah, I am hoping to enjoy Volume 2 whenever that is released. Next, we have the Yen Press titles. There's quite a few here. I didn't have a huge amount of Yen Press in the last couple months, and then all of a sudden, everything seemed to be Yen Press. All of my new stuff seemed to be Yen Press this month. But first of all, we have Volume 6 of the case study of Vanitas. This is sort of in the middle of the current arc. Oh my god. I really like Jun Mochizuki and her worlds and her characters within those worlds. Pandora Hearts is a cult favorite for a lot of people. I think it does what it's trying to do very, very well. I think it's a good example of this kind of more feminine-focused shonen, along with like Black Butler and things like that, and how well done they can be. And this one, I think, even more so than the Alice in Wonderland type of themes of Pandora Hearts, this, I think, will appeal to more people. But this is a story about vampires in a alternate, I want to say 19th century Paris, steampunk version of 19th century Paris, where we have our main character, Noe, who kind of falls into a partnership with, who is a vampire. And there's a whole vampire society and that. And then he falls into a partnership with Vanitas, who is going around trying to prevent vampires from going berserk and like losing themselves, losing their identity and attacking people, and ultimately destroying themselves and the fragile peace that vampires have with the wider society. It's very, very good. Certain elements are very horny. But it's a very beautiful series. I really like where right now we have a particular story arc where our character, there's also a conflict between, you know, vampire society and the church, or these particular agents of the church who fight and slay vampires, and, you know, pretty typical elements that you can expect with a vampire story. But this current arc, we have real insight to the history of vampires and their place within society from the eyes of someone who experienced it but from afar and was very kind of cloistered away from it, and her relationship with the people, humans and vampires, in her life, and the choices that she made and they made because of that. It's very, very, very good. I think, again, there's quite a sympathy for sad and tragic situations in Mochizuki's work and in a lot of shonen of this type. Yeah, I think there's, when it comes to shonen that people could argue is written more so for a female audience than a male audience, there is a lot more focus on the emotionality of it rather than necessarily the events and the big action set pieces. There's still definitely action set pieces. There's still definitely like a grand or wide conspiracy or adventure or whatever else that needs to be solved. Generally a conspiracy. Generally, we're not going on, island jumping type of adventure, a la One Piece. We're normally trying to solve a mystery or to bring down a corrupt government or something in stuff like Black Butler and Pandora Hearts and Vanitas. So, yeah, I really, really, really like this. Even if you're not a huge fan of Pandora Hearts, I think you should give this one a try because I think it's different enough from Pandora Hearts to be likable for more people. It's just overall a really solid work, and if you're a vampire fan, it's definitely one to check out. If you're a fan of this type of shonen, action, conspiracy, mystery type story, check it out. This volume was really good, and all of the subsequent volumes, or the prior volumes, have been really good. Give it a try if you haven't. Next is a series that is so completely my brand. I don't think anyone was surprised when I was incredibly enthusiastic about the first volume. The first volume was incredibly good. The second volume, even better, in my opinion. And if you are a fan of particular genres like I am, then you are doing yourself a disservice if you have not picked up this series yet. But this is Phantom Tales of the Night by Matsuri Volume 2. Oh my goodness. So this is kind of a chapter-contained series about a mysterious inn and innkeeper who, in exchange for your deepest, darkest secret, is able to grant a wish. And it's a very, pretty typical yokai wish granting in that, sure, you might grant a wish, but then also it doesn't actually turn out the way it does. In this volume, we see a lot more of this owner or innkeeper's assistants, Butterfly and Spider, who are right here. We get a little bit more insight to them. Look how beautiful this series is. Oh, it's so gorgeous. And oh my gosh, this series is, yokai stories are usually pretty freaking dark. This particular chapter, oh my god, it's dark. And it also builds from the last volume and a character who was introduced in that last volume. I was like, is that character? And then at the end, it's like, yeah, it is that character. It's like, oh my god. No wonder the events of volume 1 happened, because that is understandable and also really freaking dark. I just really love yokai stories that are incredibly morally dubious insofar as like the human assumption of morals and what we regard as suitable and appropriate and sort of the social norm. Yokai don't give a crap about that because they aren't human and they're not bound by our rules. They're wanting to eat babies and cause curses and do all sorts of things. So I just really love that element of monsters, and I love it when an author can take that idea and make it so compelling and make it so nuanced to monsters, especially yokai, because yokai are quite interesting mixes of like good and bad elements. They're not all of them are bad, not all of them are good, and a lot of them are in the middle. They might eat babies, but they might also do good stuff. This is not Natsume's Book of Friends. It really reminds me of, although not a purely true yokai story, the atmosphere especially, and sort of the mystery of this innkeeper, this master of the inn, really reminds me of Holic by Clamp. It's just good. Although, Holic, Yoko, is it Yoko? Yes. Is normally, she does kind of the best thing for the situation, and it is a positive choice. This innkeeper, not necessarily. But it just makes it that much more interesting for the story. Yeah, I love this series. It is exactly my type of story and was probably my favorite new release from Yen Press last year. And it just continues to be great. Cannot wait for Volume 3. Next is another ongoing series from Yen Press, and this one is almost finished. I'm going to be really sad when it's over. It just recently ended in Japan after a long time. It was on hiatus for quite a while and kind of went on and off hiatus every so often. But that is Silver Spoon by Hiromu Arakawa. This is volume 12 of 15. And oh my gosh, as per usual, I love Hiromu Arakawa just in general. But I think Silver Spoon, as I've said before, is definitely her magnum opus. Comparatively to Fullmetal Alchemist, this is the story that she's wanted to tell, and the characters she cares about the most, sort of for their future and for their choices and for the difficulty they may have in the future. I really like this series a whole lot. I've said it before, but I really enjoy the accurate portrayal of the agricultural industry. It doesn't sugarcoat anything, but it's upfront about the goods and the bads, just the realities of not only the agricultural industrial industry as it exists, but also the people within that industry and why certain choices are made and how it can be improved and how things can change. It's super duper good. And with this, we are now 4/5 of the way through. We're 80% through the series. There's not a lot more of the story to go, and I cannot wait for it to be completed. It's kind of incredible that a series this well known and beloved and kind of high caliber from a very well known mangaka was unlicensed for so long. But it took a very, very, very long time for this series to be licensed. It finally has been, and Yen has done a great job on it. I think if you enjoy Arakawa's writing, I think she's a very funny author, a very funny writer. Her art is fantastic, but she's also very, self-aware and critical, and isn't afraid to be very critical of the realities of this industry and of agriculture as a whole. And oh man, yeah, I've said it before with Silver Spoon, but I think Fullmetal Alchemist was the series that got her the popularity to be able to sustain this story, which is the story that she's wanted to tell and wanted to share with the world, comparatively. So, Fullmetal Alchemist, you guys know I love it. It's wonderful. Still kind of a quintessential shonen adventure story. But this is, the series that's asking the real questions and confronting real problems, a lot more relatable problems that, a lot of people have to deal with and actually are experiencing in their day-to-day lives. And agriculture, farmers and those who are within the farming industry and in farming families, they are so important for modern society, but they're so often forgotten about when we as consumers are literally consuming the goods that they produce for us. So it's great. It's a great series. I love it. And support it. And especially because it is kind of finishing up. So now might be a good time to start picking it up. Speaking of food, we have Volume 7 of Delicious in Dungeon by Ryoko Kui. This continues to be funny and interesting. This particular volume, we have a lot of character development for multiple characters. We also get sort of a reveal of the real mystery of this dungeon and for the wider society as well, and the realities of, you know, the potential between the races, the various, you know, fantasy, tabletop style races that are in this series. We get a lot of background on Senshi and his personal experiences and his personal fears. It's just, oh, it's so good. It's so good. I love this series. If you're a big fan of food manga, especially, but if you're a big fan of like fantasy and going into sort of the nitty gritty of the lore and all of that when we're talking about like tabletop games, D&D, stuff like that, this will definitely be your thing. I really like the humor of the story. I find it very funny. There's so many things about this series that I really, really like. It's kind of an all-around, not fish out of water, that's not the correct term I'm looking for, but all around these characters are very likable, but because many of them are different races to each other, within the party, so we have like a tall man or a quote-unquote, or like a human character, we have an elf, we have a halfling, and then we have a dwarf as well, and then we also have like a beastman character now, and we've come across like gnomes and all sorts of various, and kobolds as well, all various sorts of, you know, fantastical races. There's always sort of the culture clash between the characters, and I think that's what makes a lot of the humor really funny. One of my favorite characters is the halfling character. Maybe I'm just biased because I play a halfling in D&D, but I find him really funny, and my poor boy. They don't take him seriously. They all, like, a lot of the humor, it comes from him in the fact that the dwarf character treats him like an actual child, like a little boy, when he's not a little boy. He's an adult man, but he's just small because he's a halfling. And then that kind of plays into some of the explanation of this volume. So the humor like has an additional purpose rather than just being like, haha, funny jokes. I also, because of the culture clash, it's never so much that any one character is the butt of the joke, really. I know some people, maybe early on, felt that a lot of the humor, or a lot of our main elf character, she was the butt of the joke a lot of the time, which I can understand, but I don't think that it was ever like mean-spirited or to try and prove that she's an idiot or something, like she doesn't know what she's talking about. In fact, she's probably the smartest of the group, but her logic doesn't really work in the face of a lot of the situations that they're trying to get through, and her logic is kind of fails when she's being presented with all of these meals made out of monsters. There is still a lot of cooking in this volume, but ultimately this is a very character growth focused volume, and oh man, it's funny, but also like touching, heartwarming, that's the word I'm looking for, touching and heartwarming, and kind of tragic. And it's really nice whenever we get a volume like this where we do learn more about these characters whom we have grown to love over the course of the series, and who we regard as like just goofballs, who are struggling from point A to point B, but who, you know, the side characters have a different perspective on, and we also are learning more about like their reputation, which we didn't know about before, and that may change our perspective on things. Oh, it's so good. Yeah, if you like funny fantasy stuff and you don't mind cooking or food focused manga, Delicious in Dungeon is a must-read. Oh man, it's so funny. Next is the last of the Yen Press manga, but it's also the conclusion of a series. And this is Volume 3 of Fruits Basket Another by Natsuki Takaya. This is a short sequel spin-off to the original series Fruits Basket, obviously, about the next generation of the Soma family and a girl that they go to school with. And I've said it before, this isn't a necessary sequel as such. I don't think it was needed for this series to exist, but I do think that it's an interesting look at how the events of the first original series have influenced the family going into the future. A large theme of the original Fruits Basket is breaking cycles of abuse, and that's one of the major themes of this manga as well, but it's more so focused on our main character, who through her relationships with the Somas is now learning to recognize and break through her own cycles of abuse. And it's nothing is fully realized or confronted or fixed, quote unquote, within this short series, but it's the first step for this character to gain more confidence in herself and in finding her independence and in finding people who care about her, which is definitely what was, again, a large focus of Fruits Basket. And I think I don't know if I expected it, but really this is not so much a romance between like a new character and the children of the children of the main characters from Fruits Basket, like I expected it to be, or that I think the first one kind of set up. I think it's more so, there's definitely perhaps a romantic element there in the series overall, but it's not what the character you'd expect. I wouldn't say it's inherently a romance, but I mean, it's arguable, who knows. But more so about confronting your past and, the fear of the pain that you may have caused others, or the problems that you may have caused others, even unknowingly, and the shame, and, oh, it's so good. I think it's a really interesting addition to the series. Fruits Basket, like, it is kind of perfect in how it's told, and it never needed this sequel, and I can definitely understand the criticisms that it's just like a fan servicey, like, oh, and here's the children of all these characters you remember. Like, it definitely is that. But I do think that it has a real nugget of worth in there because of these additional elements and because of these themes that are kind of paying dividends from the previous series. So, it's not a necessary thing, but if you're a big Fruits Basket fan, then maybe check it out. It's done very, very well. And yeah, I'm happy that I have it. This third volume came out ages ago, but I just finally managed to pick it up. So yeah, it's kind of short and sweet as an addition as well, so it's not like you have to be buying 10, 20 more volumes to be following the characters of this story. Finally, for the quote-unquote regular manga, this is the only Kodansha title that I got this month. That is Drifting Dragons Volume 2 by Taku Kuwabara, another series that I gave a first impressions video on at the beginning of the month. And this is, this volume I think gives you a better idea of what this series is about. We learn more about the larger world and the impact of dragons within it on the culture. And, I said the first volume was kind of a low-key food manga, And there's still definitely like the food aspect here in the series. We do also get like a larger idea of Draking's personal, you know, part of society, but it is more. There's a lot more that is going on here, and it's quite interesting to just enjoy the awe and the adventure of these characters and them exploring the world and learning more about dragons. With each each volume, you do learn more about the crew, which is really, in my opinion, why you read this book, because the crew is very likable. They all have their different reasons as to why they do things and why they're on board a Draking ship. Oh, it's really, really good. In my review of the first volume, I mentioned that there is quite a lot of parallels with sort of historical whaling, which may make people uncomfortable, but I feel like it's handled in such a way, and the atmosphere of the manga as a whole makes it easier to accept that this is just a larger, like, it just feels like a part of the history of that area. It feels like if we were going to be reading Moby Dick, or if we're going to be reading about like a 17th or 18th century whaling story, like it's something that existed, and it doesn't, in my opinion, it doesn't feel like it's saying it's a good thing. It's just a part of what it's not, you know, it's not promoting the whaling industry as like a, hey, yeah, let's all go start killing whales. Believe me, I would tell you if it was. But really, I think there's a lot of elements to enjoy with this one, especially if you like kind of low-key healing type of isekai series, food manga. It's got a lot of elements to it that work in tandem with each other. And even if you don't like particular aspects, the overall feeling and world building and just culture of this story, there's a lot to enjoy from it. And I do encourage you to at least try the first volume, whether it be in print or digitally, because the series does have 5 or 6 or 8 volumes out digitally. It is worth the read. You know, it's one that I think is unique and quite awesome in the fact that it's like inspiring awe, and I think you just really fall into these characters and their closeness and their friendships and their, you know, their bickering and their various squabbles that they get up to, in the way that, you know, people who do live in very close quarters together become family to each other. It's just really good. Check it out. Check out my recommendations video as well, my first impressions video. This is one that I am up to date with on Crunchyroll, so this wasn't like a new read for me or anything, but yeah, it's a pretty dang good one, and it's one that hopefully with the advent of the Netflix anime adaptation, more people will try it out, because it's well worth at least trying. Next, onwards to my BL manga that I picked up this month. The first one being kind of a double dip. I have the original release of this, and I kind of just wanted to compare the pair. Compare this release and the previous release, the translation, that sort of stuff. Plus, I really like this series, and I don't mind owning 2 copies of it. And that is 7 Days, Monday to Sunday, by Venio Tachibana and Rihito Takarai. So you may recognize Takarai's name from the popular BL series 10 Count, a series which I don't really like very much, but is very, very well liked, just generally. But this is only illustrated by Takarai. It's written by Tachibana, and this is a 2-in-1 omnibus of the 7 Days manga about 2 high school boys, one who dates pretty much anyone who will ask him at the beginning of the week. And in order to try and fall in love, and if he's able to fall in love at the end of the week, he's like, well, you're just going to be my girlfriend / partner / whatever for the rest of my life. You made me feel love. In that dramatic way that teenagers do. But, so our main character, he decides to ask this other boy out in kind of a way to give him a break from being the perfect boyfriend for a week, and so they can just hang out and, he doesn't have to hold up this pretense of trying to make himself fall in love with a girl and also try and get this girl to fall in love with him or whatever else. Needless to say, they catch feelings. So if you like a good, fake dating to real dating story, then, maybe check this one out. It's a great one. This was for a long time sort of the quintessential recommendation for, hey, if you want to try a BL or a yaoi, which in the old language, but you don't really know where to start. You're a little bit afraid of finding something that's super toxic or super, smutty, erotic, and you're just not really into that. So maybe might be a bit confronting. Then this is a really good, sweet, quite tame and restrained story to start with. There is elements of kissing and things like that, but nothing super duper erotic or smutty. It's just kind of a slow, exactly as I said, fake dating to real dating, and then kind of conflict between both boys because they're falling in love with the other one, but they don't realize that it's a mutual feeling, so they're both kind of dreading the end of this week, because, it's really, really good. Really happy that Sublime managed to relicense this, because as we all know, June is the worst. And the series has been out of print for a very, 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 very long time. It's had a couple reprints via, crowdfunding and things like that, because it is one of their more popular titles. But now Sublime has it, and now I can freely recommend it again, because, it's hard to recommend a 2-volume series where both volumes are $100+, just for the sake of but it's really good, you should try it. 7 days. It's not nowadays we have a lot more series that you can recommend as a good starting point for BL. Things like I Hear the Sunspot or Classmates or Go For It Nakamura. But I think this is still one that holds up. It's not terribly tropey. It doesn't have anything super toxic in it theme-wise. The two characters are quite likable. And it's quite, it's just a slow first love story with teenage boys. So, it's good. Check it out if this sounds like your thing, or if you've heard about it for years and you've been wanting to buy it, but it's always been out of print. Now's your chance. Pick it up and reward Sublime for their hard work in giving us good manga. Next is a one and done BL. This is so sweet. This volume. This is put out by 7 Seas, but this is Mita Ori's Our Dining Table, about 2 young men, both 23, I believe, who, through a series of events, end up dining together. This guy has this younger brother, and then this is the kind of stranger in their life, but the younger boy, the little brother, encourages him. He kind of is given some food that this guy makes, and he loves it so much. Food at home isn't super great, so the 2 brothers ask this relative stranger to come and eat with them, and this guy has his own kind of trauma around eating and eating with other people. So he kind of wants to deny it at first, but soon he starts really enjoying the meals that he shares with these two brothers. And then feelings happen, and it's sweet, it's cute. Although this isn't quite like a parenting manga, I really like BL that does have like a kid in it. So, because our one character's little brother isn't his son, obviously, but he kind of functions in the same way. It's always good when your family members acknowledge and accept and want to spend time with your partner. Oh, it's just really sweet and cute and heartwarming. And again, this is a pretty good intro BL. I think a lot of people would enjoy this. It obviously also has a large focus on food, so checks off 2 boxes for me. Was really happy when this was licensed by Seven Seas. I'd never heard of it before, but I hadn't really heard of Mita Ori in general, but I'm really happy that this got licensed and then we got it, because it's really good. It's definitely worth the read. And yeah, again, if you like sweet BL, family focused and food focused BL, or just kind of domestic sweet romance, then hey, Our Dining Table, definitely check it out. Oh man, and then finally for the BL, we have kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum. It's not so much that it is somewhat explicit. It is somewhat problematic. It's messy. It's a very good series, but it's certainly not sweet and fluffy and wonderful. And our characters aren't exactly good people. But oh my gosh, this is kind of a this is a classic that I think a lot of people wanted, and when they licensed it, it was definitely a surprise, an exciting surprise. And that is Satono Mizushiro's The Cornered Mouse Dreams of Cheese. Okay, so how do I start with this story? This is the story of 2 men who knew each other in university. One who is now working as a private investigator, and his client is his previous, I think, senpai in university, who he had loved for a long time. He loved throughout his whole life, and was the only person that he loved, but he never told him. And now he has been hired by his senpai's wife in order to gain information on him cheating, in order to get better terms for divorce and things like that. So this guy, his life is kind of, I don't want to say falling apart. He makes a lot of bad decisions. He quote unquote goes with the flow, but that just, he sleeps around and then kind of tries to act like it's not his fault. He's like, oh, well, he's just very weak-willed. I'm like, dude, nobody's making you cheat. You're making that decision. So yeah, he's kind of a terrible person. He's cheating on his wife, and he and his wife don't really have a very good relationship. And then, so his marriage breaks down with her, but it's kind of an amicable split because they're both not very happy with each other. But anyway, so this private investigator, he's like, oh, hey, yeah, your wife hired me about your cheating, and I've found evidence of you cheating. But if you don't want me to tell your wife, because this is before the whole breakdown of the affair or the marriage, I've loved you since university, and if you'll sleep with me, so he's like blackmailing him into a relationship, basically. I won't tell your wife, and because this guy is like, oh well, I have no choice. Whenever anyone propositions me, might as well. And because also, he's wanting to hide his his cheating ways from his wife, he has more motivation to start a physical relationship with this other man of whom he once knew in university. And so, yeah, I mean, they're both bad people. They make bad choices. They're kind of very well suited for each other in that sense. Ultimately, our married character breaks up with his wife or gets divorced. And then the private investigator, he breaks up with his longtime boyfriend because he's like, well, I truly love you. I'd break up with, oh man, it's messy, it's drama. Again, like, it's complete opposite of something like Our Dining Tables or 7 Days. But man, if you like the high drama story, it's quite, it's got quite a bit of sexual content in there. Then maybe check this one out. But obviously, as I said, there's themes of cheating. There's themes of just lying and making really dumb decisions. And, as I said, they definitely deserve each other. There's a second volume of this called The Carp Jumps Twice from the Chopping Block, or something along those lines, which I'm really looking forward to. I had read this years and years and years ago, probably about a decade ago, via scans, because it was never available in English, but I have never read the follow-up, so that'll be all new for me. But it's been a long time since I had read this, so it was nice coming back to it and seeing how much it held up, and it definitely did. This is a very good representation of a very messy relationship and very bad decisions, and I really like it. I mean, this is definitely not a series for everyone, but I really like the messiness of Mizushiro's characters and story and the decisions they make. And sometimes, people make dumb decisions. You can try and help people and warn people till the cows come home. You can try to do that all day, every day, but ultimately they've got to make their own decisions, and 9 times out of 10 they don't learn. So I don't think it's unrealistic that this would happen. But again, elements of cheating, blackmail, things like that. So if that's not your bag for BL, skip this one. But it is really nice having such a well-known and highly wished for and anticipated and well-regarded BL finally find its way to English. This has been available in German forever. So yeah, again, like I said, nice to finally see it legally in English. Oh my god, I can't speak. In English. Finally, for this video, we have a couple light novels. So yeah, the first one being Ascendance of a Bookworm, Part 1, Volume 3, Daughter of a Soldier. This is the final volume in this particular arc. And we have our fold-out color pages here. So I really, really enjoy this series. This is a series put out by J-Novel. There are illustrations in here. I'm going to see if I can find one. As you can see, this is quite a thick book. And Ascendance of a Bookworm, just in general, is a lot thicker than I think a more typical light novel. But I really, really, really love mine and Lutz and the various characters in this series. There was a illustration here. And this recently had an anime. This final volume is, or this final book of this part is the ending of that series. So the first season of anime completes this Daughter of a Soldier arc. So if you're not familiar, this is an isekai story about a young woman called Urano, who is really bookish, absolutely loves reading, spent her whole life reading, and amassing a vast wealth of knowledge from reading throughout her life, as well as her mother having been a very crafty type of person, but never one to stick to a lot of the projects that she started. She has a lot of kind of hands-on knowledge about making, homemade soaps and knitting and things like that, and crafty things. But she is killed in an unfortunate earthquake in which she is crushed by books, and she's reincarnated as a 5-year-old girl in a very sickly body in this fantasy world, but she's incredibly poor, and she's been reincarnated in this world where books are not easy to access. The literacy rate is very low, and so now she's trying to relive her dream, or to re-achieve her dream of becoming a librarian. And in order to do that, she's deciding to create plant paper published books and develop publishing, and to raise the literacy rate of the common folk and all sorts of things. But because of her modern knowledge, she does have, obviously, insight on a lot of things that we take for granted. She's very aware of her hygiene, and she goes through a lot of steps to try and improve her hygiene, and improve clothing, and improve meals, and all sorts of things, which is not common for a commoner, which she should be, and especially as a young, sickly girl who really didn't have any world experience prior to the reincarnation. And she slowly grows into becoming herself in this new world. She slowly gains more strength and more ability to do things. She quickly befriends a boy, one of her neighbors, who's the same age as her, called Lutz, and he is kind of the brawn of the operation. So she starts to invent things and sell the ideas and sell the products that she can make to merchants in order to gain capital, in order to make the books that she wants. And Lutz is kind of her best friend, her partner. He makes the things that she thinks of, because she physically cannot do them herself. So I really love the partnership, the friendship between those two. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. I adore the series. I'm currently up to volume 5 of the actual novel releases. I follow this through J Novel Club. It's one of their subscription series that they have on their service. And I highly, 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 highly recommend it. This is coming from someone who's really not into current isekai. I just really like mine. I really like how, although the character is somewhat being selfish in trying to create a world that they're more comfortable in, or using knowledge of the modern day to, do things and better their experience within this fantasy world, it's never in order to become the most famous person, or to become hugely respected or anything like that. She'd much prefer to live a very quiet life with a bunch of books. But through her changes, she's bettering the entirety of society. And it's just kind of a really different dynamic than I think a lot of male-focused isekai of current day is. I really like mine. I really like Lutz. I think he's a great character. I really like Benno and Tuli, mine's sister, just her whole family and everyone around them. I think there's a lot of really interesting characters who play a different role in her experience, and mine herself over the series has grown so much, even from her previous Urano days, where although she wasn't necessarily a bad person, but she was this very self-centered and selfish person, and you see that a lot in Volume 1. currently, she's just changed a lot and become much more aware of the people around her and much more caring towards the people around her, much more concerned about the people around her. And it's just really nice to see. I just love that. Love that for her. Love that for me. Yeah, ultimately, this is a wonderful series. And if you're wanting to try a light novel series, especially a newer-ish one, or if you liked the anime adaptation of the series that's on Crunchyroll, go watch it there. Check this one out, because it's very, very good. I think there's 8 arcs in all, and each part or each arc just gets longer and longer and longer. So it is a long one. I think there's 17 volumes in Japan currently, but I don't think they've published all of the web novels into like print novels as of yet in Japan. So who knows? I don't know. But yeah, Sentence of a Bookworm, really, 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 really good. Next is volume 21 of Spice and Wolf, Springlog volume 4 by Isuna Hasakura. Oh my gosh, guys. This is the first time in these new, I guess, sequel, not quite sequel, but these new additions to the Spice and Wolf original franchise, where our characters, Lawrence and Holo, have returned to traveling. So we have gotten to the point where if you enjoyed the original series, it's still a collection of short stories. We're never going to, I think, get back to like the larger single plot novels with these characters, but oh man, it's nice to see these two on the road again, and they're still really great at, you know, banter with each other. I think there's a lot to love with these characters, and if you enjoyed the original, then, you know, these are really solid follow-ups to the series. There's so much I can say about Spice and Wolf. It's definitely it's definitely a series that I think is a classic within light novels. It's one of the longest running in English light novels, and it's understandable as to why Hasakura decided to reconnect with this series after such a long time with the 10th anniversary. It's just, oh, it's so good. Yeah, if you're a fan of the original and you haven't been reading these sequel follow-up short story collections, I do think the first 3 are decently good. I think there's a lot of insight to some of the characters, and you know, being 10 or 15 years down the line, it does give a lot more to understanding how these two have changed as they've gotten older. But yeah, this is very classic Spice and Wolf. This is these two who we've grown to love over these 20 volumes, returning to what they've always done. And oh boy, it's really, really good. I love it. Yeah, I have a review for this upcoming. And so keep your eyes peeled for that on EnglishLightNovels.com. I have a couple things to review before this, because I haven't been writing a lot of reviews, but I've been reading a lot to be able to write reviews, if that makes sense. So yeah, look out for that, and check out Spice and Wolf if you haven't, because it's very, very good. And if the kind of wolf girl aspect of it puts you off, don't let it. Give it a shot. Give the anime a shot, if not the novels, because it's very, very good for what it is. And finally, for light novels, we have the newest entry to my favorite ongoing light novel series, and that's saying a lot because I am enjoying a lot of light novel series currently. It is Baccano! Oh my gosh, you guys! 2002 Side A, Bullet Garden. This is by Ryogo Narita, and this is volume 12. The year 2002, as you can see. So if you're not following the Baccano novels, there are 3 arcs within, or 3 timelines, I guess, within the story. There's the main story, which has like red covers and brown red spines, which is the 1930s arc, which is where most people recognize the Baccano name from. It's very focused on, gangster era, Prohibition era USA. Then there's this gray set of spines and title pages or covers. That's the word I'm looking for. Which is set in the 18th century, so like 1711, back during the initial Alchemist timeline. And then we have the future, quote-unquote, arcs, which is set in the current day, in the 2000s. We've had one book previous in this like future arc set in 2001. This book is set after that in 2002. And so there are some characters who are recognizable here, which you may recognize just on the front. We've got Firo and Ennis, and Chez is also in this book. But then we also have new characters, some of whom are also recognizable from not necessarily the series itself, but from whom they're related to. So we've got these 2 characters who may be reminiscent of some beloved characters in this franchise, and then this character as well, who is a relation of a much beloved character in the franchise. Oh my gosh, guys! So this is set on it's set on a cruise liner, and Firo and Ennis and Chez are on vacation onto this liner. They're going on their honeymoon 30 years after their wedding, but it's fine. We don't talk about that. And really, Chez he's tagging along as an excuse to go on this vacation because Firo wouldn't ask otherwise. But he's like, I know this is the honey. I'm going to leave you guys alone. And Firo's sweating bullets. He doesn't know what to do. These 2 longest run, like I'm talking. If you think Kazuhikaru, or if you think there's a story with a slow burn romance, it got nothing on Baccano. Literally 70 years. And then we've got these characters who are very famous in the movie industry, and then we've got a kind of terrorist group. And then we've also got a bunch of kids who are stowaways. And this Bobby is a little bit of a troublemaker, a little bit of a punk. And so we've got a couple different fighting factions on this ship, which trouble seems to always follow these characters. So not really to the surprise of anyone. I love these characters. I just really like reading them. Even the new characters, I always find it very interesting. I think that Naruto does a great job in balance. I say this all the time, but I think he does a great job in balancing so many different characters together and representing so many different people and making them all really compelling. He's got quite an international cast as well, which is really cool and unusual for, Japanese light novels, just in inherentness. But, this is side A, so it's only part 1 of, I believe, a 2-part, maybe a 3-part arc. So I probably shouldn't have read this right away, but whenever I get a Baccano novel, I read it right away. Because it's just so good. I can't help myself. Baccano is an ongoing light novel series. I think there's 20 volumes. And from my understanding, there's an arc that Naruto is currently finishing, which should be the final arc in the main series, so the 1930s timeline. And then there may be a short story collection or 2 with like the future or past arcs. But all said and done, it's on its way out. It's wrapping up. But Baccano is really unlike Naruto's work. Is kind of unlike most typical light novels. Even when when light novels weren't focused on the isekai trend that it is now, or even the school club kind of trend that it was prior to the isekai boom. It's just very different from everything else that's going on. It's a historical fiction kind of supernatural mishmash of all sorts of things. And as I said, all of the characters are very unique and diverse, and there's a lot of them, and he's able to balance them really, really well. Not every character is completely fleshed out as the other characters, kind of as expected, because there's literally like 100 characters. There's no way you could flesh out each and every one of them. But the ones that are important always get their time to shine. I love this series a lot. I really like most, if not all, of the main cast, which is a lot of characters. And I really like their relationships, their chemistry with each other. The plots are always really intriguing and compelling. Again, I'm a big historical fantasy kind of thing, but it being set in, historic USA is pretty cool, pretty unique for light novels, at least. I just really like prohibition and like mafia-esque stories as well. I don't consume a huge amount of them, because I find like if you're watching just mafia movies, there's a lot of them and they're very familiar, they're very samey. But I can always support a good, Prohibition era story. And Baccano is a classic when it comes to that. Yeah, oh my gosh. It's fun, it's funny, there's no Isaac and Miria for the first time in a long time. Well, I mean, last volume we didn't have them either, because they weren't born yet. That wouldn't make sense if they were in the last one. It was 1711. They were not even close to being born yet. But they're not in this volume either, but I'm expecting them in the next volume. They'll be in the next volume. You can't have an arc without Isaac and Miria, unless it is literally 300 years before they are born. Or 200 years before they are born. Yeah, Baccano is great. Even if you're not a fan of light novels and the current light novel trends, check it out. It's different from Spice and Wolf, but they're both really good. Yen Press is doing a really great job with these hardcovers. I think the translation is really punchy and is able to capture each character's voice very, very well. This volume, although it is set in the future and some characters are not present because it wouldn't make sense for them to be present. It's been 70 years. They're not the people they once were. They're not completely gone from the story either, which is good. Also, this volume ties in with volume 1 of the series, and I think that was really clever. I think they did a good job, or Naruto did a good job linking that, and kind of and it makes you feel like that one meme. Where is it from? Not Community, where it's just like all the board with all the pins on it. And you feel like you're solving this grand conspiracy. You can see how everything is linked to everything else, which is just like a fun thing to do. You feel accomplished when you're like, oh my god, I remember that. Oh my god, it was foreshadowed. So it just feels like a very organic space, and it's kind of funny because Baccano and Durara as well, which is his other main series that people would know. They exist in the same universe, but obviously one is in New York, one is in Japan. But Ikebukuro in Japan is like a small area, so it makes sense that a lot of these characters would interact with each other or run into each other. New York is, it's still within like a smaller area of New York, so it makes sense that they would interact. And in the 30s, it would make sense that these characters would probably interact. But like modern day New York, oh man, there's a lot of people there, and I think it's smart in how they've done it, because the modern stories are quite contained to smaller areas, so it makes sense to why characters would interact with each other and are in just like things are impacted by other characters who don't necessarily know each other, but they exist within the same area, they live in the same area, rather than trying to pretend that like all of New York like interacts with all the rest of New York, because that's not the reality of it. But yeah, Baccano is great. Read it, and it's fun seeing Naruto jump around with the timelines, which is something you can do when you have characters who are literally immortal and can't age. Spoilers for the whole premise of the series, but it's not a spoiler. It's not a spoiler. Yeah, great series. Check it out. So, that is all the manga that I got for January. There's quite a bit, mainly because of buying secondhand stuff, finding some good deals on some older volumes, plus just a bunch of really good new releases. There were a couple things that were like new releases, but I didn't get them until now, mainly because there were stuff that I got, and I said there was a couple volumes here that I got at the end of December, so they're technically last year's books, but also stuff that I bought last year in holiday sales, and then they took forever to get to me, as is the story of my life. You know how it goes. International shipping is not kind. But yeah, hopefully this was interesting to listen to, somewhat informative. Let me know your thoughts on any of the titles that I spoke about, if you've been reading them, if you enjoy them, if you discovered something new that you want to try. Let me know, because I love talking about them, and I love pretty much, well, really, each and every one of these series. We are so lucky. There's so much good manga coming out. So many good titles. Yeah, I can't keep up, as it should be quite obvious with all of these books. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on any of the series that I was talking about today. Whether you've picked up any of these books, whether you love them, hate them, or, you know, previously read them, because, you know, some of them are older. Let me know. Otherwise, as always, you can hear or contact me or follow me or whatever else on both my Twitter and Instagram. I am almost always on Twitter. I'm rarely on Instagram, so beware of that. But otherwise, yeah, I do try to get back to everyone who comments and who messages me or tweets at me. I have an upcoming podcast for next month as well, which hopefully you guys will enjoy. I have this month's podcast that just came out last week. Give that a listen if you're interested in digital manga or just digital publishing and everything that goes on with that. If you're confused or you have questions or you just want some insight as to why manga is making this digital transition, or why more and more titles, more and more publishers have digital titles. Once again, I have first impression video for both Drifting Dragons and Heavenly Delusion that both came out this month, so give those a watch if you heard me talk about them in this volume, had some thoughts, wanted some more insight. Go check those videos out. Check them out, not chuck them out. And yeah, otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching. I look forward to spending the coming year of 2020 with you all. I hope you continue to support me. I really appreciate it. I was recently informed that I am very close to 3,000 subscribers, which is terrifying. Thank you guys so much. I have some plans for when I hit 3,000, so maybe when that happens, we'll see. We'll go from there. I also, a couple weeks ago, was on Flip Otaku's Flipcast live stream. So if you want some insight into just me outside of the manga and things like that, we still talk about manga, but we talk about a whole bunch of stuff. So watch my episode on there as well. It was really wonderful being a guest there. Thank you once again, Flip. You are a very cool dude, and that was a lot of fun. Otherwise, yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next video. Bye till then.